This is Building a Creative Life. I'm Pam Vale, a New England artist, bringing the world of creativity to your door through casual conversations with artists, creators, and everyday people, helping curious, midlife women begin their next creative chapter. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello, creative friends, and welcome to Building a Creative Life. I'm so glad you're here because today's conversation is a special one. My guest is Nicola Farnhill, a time-served therapist and coach with a beautiful, grounded way of helping others reconnect to their higher selves. She's a kindred spirit who's deeply committed to healing, authenticity, and guiding others to create lives they truly love. We talk about her personal journey of healing from trauma, how creativity can lose its way and find its way back, and the importance of self-belief when you're manifesting change. She also offers wisdom for highly sensitive people and reminds us that spirituality is not a concept, it's a way of living. This episode is soulful and affirming, so stay tuned to the end where I'll share a few thoughts on how you can apply what we talked about to your own creative life. Well, welcome, Nicola. I'm glad to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much, Pam. It's lovely to be here. It's really great.
I found you by seeing you on a live with somebody else, and I was really struck by a lot of what you talked about, and I'm excited to share it with our people today. I learned some things, which is awesome. I love when I can find out things about myself that I didn't know about, but I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about you and just your journey and how, what you do, what you offer.
Okay, cool. So, where to begin? I guess I should start by saying I'm 54 years old. I've been on a journey like most people. My journey has been part of my purpose, which is quite often what happens with most of us as well. I had quite extensive trauma when I was younger, and when I say that, I don't want to play the victim in that sense because we all have trauma on different levels. That is for sure. We've all got things that we need to unpeel and to learn about and to have awareness in order to grow. So I'm not going to play the victim with that. However, it was quite extensive, and it took me rather a long time to get through that trauma, probably 35 years. I would say. So I had 35 years of escapism, negative self-soothing, I would confess to having on every level possible. I don't like to say addiction because I think sometimes that can become an identity. I know in certain circles that that's used, but I tend to say it's negative forms of self-soothing because I feel that the reason that we do use things outside of ourselves is certainly because we don't want to feel the way we're feeling right now. And so it's negative because it helps at the time, but long term it becomes another trauma and another problem. So I had lots of those, lots of relationships. I'm here to be very open and honest. That'll probably make people feel very comfortable because we're not often comfortable with vulnerability, are we? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I took that journey. My mum was a counsellor and a therapist, so I kind of fell into that way of life. And I guess that helped me quite a lot with finding my own answers. Um, I would say the biggest part of my journey to healing, outside of psychology and the things that I do with people now, is having a connection to Source or God or the universe, whatever you want to call it. I was born and raised as a Christian, but was not practicing as such. And in the last, I would say, 10 years, I've really, really felt through my mentors and through my own soul the calling to be connected to my higher self. And that's the name of my company, Connected to Self, which, funnily enough, I chose at a time when I wasn't really aware of what it meant. It just came to me. I
Mm-hmm.
honestly believe that we have no coincidences.
I
Um,
too.
so now I use Source as a power and make sure that I'm connected as much as possible. Um, and I would say, as part of the healing process, I think being connected to God, Source, whatever you want to call it, um, has allowed me to feel less alone and more supported on my journey. And I think that's one of the things that trauma does to you. It makes you want to isolate yourself with shame
Mm-hmm.
and with blame. And I think once you realize that you're not on your own, that actually the universe or source or God wants things to work out for you, and that you can move out of that victim status.
Right. And it's not
And
always easy to see that when you're in the middle of it.
it's just not, and I practice talk therapy very much, and it's very much about bringing awareness, but sometimes it's about, not just thinking it logically, but feeling it. And that being connected to source has been a huge, huge part, as I say, of my healing process. And it's something that I incorporate very much in my own life and very much in the life of my clients now, because I do see a lot of clients with unresolved trauma or energetic problems, and they've been in therapy for years. And as I say to my clients, I don't want to see you for years. Even though I love you, I don't want to see you for years. I want you to move on and
Hmm.
have that connection and know that whether I'm there or whoever else is there, that have always got access to that higher power, that you're a soul that thinks you are beautiful and you are worthy and you are enough. So that, in a nutshell, is my life and how I work and practice now. And I think it's truly, truly valuable. And as I say, has been the biggest part of my healing journey, most definitely.
Yeah. I think that people sometimes get stuck in thinking that source or a higher power has to mean religion.
Yeah,
And I'm involved with a program and um, totally identify with that being able to help through traumatic events or addictions or whatever you want to call it. I
yeah,
also feel like creative self-expression for me has been
yes.
a huge gift, and I think has kept certain behaviors from escalating. I think that as a child and as a youth, when I didn't have access or knowledge to other things, definitely, I used things that were later on
Not
not
healthy.
helpful. Um,
Mhm.
and I would love it if you could share. I know you touched a little bit on connecting to your higher power or connecting to your source. And
Yeah.
maybe you could like simplify that for someone who doesn't have experience like you do or like I do with that, and maybe doesn't have a religious background that they want to, connect to. Are there
Yeah.
ways creatively that you could explain that?
I think that for me, it's very much source. That connection to source is about spirituality. So it's not. It's spirituality to me is a way of living. It's not a strict set of guidelines, as in a religion maybe. It's something where you find the inner connection with yourself. And I think after trauma, what happens is we tend to look outside ourselves for the solutions. And I think anything creative, if we're talking about creativity, I'm a writer. I've always loved to dance and sing, and I guess those were my expressions. And the only thing I can say is that when I'm not expressing myself, that I'm not in a healthy place. And I think that tells me that when I connect to creativity, that is when I am connected to source, because that's a form of expression, a unique form of expression that I have individually. I'm sure you have different forms, or some may be the same.
Hmm.
So what I do, I can tell when I'm connected to that sense of self and when I'm not, when I'm connected to source, because things flow a lot easily, and that can be an environment. So if I'm in the wrong environment, then I can feel disconnected and disjointed. It can be around the people that I'm with. And I'm not saying that we have to be with like-minded people all the time. However, when you've got a nice flow of conversation and you're feeling really good and you're expressing yourself in a really unique way and you're being heard and seen, then I think that really, really makes you feel connected. So we definitely have our people that connect us. But also
Hmm.
sometimes just preparing myself by putting my energy in a good place. Because for me, spirituality, source energy, is a reflection of the soul. Your soul would always. I wrote things like, "Dear Nicola, I love you so much. I wish you could see me yourself in my eyes, and see how talented and gifted you are, how beautiful you are, how abundant you are, how there's never lack, how you're always supported, always loved." And I think if we can connect to that, again, within the healing of trauma. It's a huge thing because trauma causes us to feel not worthy, to feel not enough, to feel lack,
Mm-hmm.
to question, if there was something, if there wasn't anything wrong with me, why would this have happened to
Right.
me? So we have that connection then, but when we connect back to the real identity, which the soul knows, then we can write a letter. And I would encourage anyone to write a letter like that. And it's really strange how at first when I was writing it, there was still some levels of discomfort there about actually praising myself, and but the more I got into it, the more I realized that that is my true form, my true self. And it's only through the trauma that we disconnect. So, doing things like that, but also sometimes not meditating. You don't need to meditate, just to sit quietly and go in. And if people don't know what that means, I guess for me, it's just about breathing and just taking some quiet time. And maybe if you want some answers to things, then to ask some questions, because whether you identify it as source or God or energy or the universe, the answers will always come. Maybe at the beginning of this process, you don't trust the process, but like anything over time, when it starts to resonate, when you feel that creativity come, when you've done those few little things, like be in the right environment, be with the right people, do things that are fun. That's
Right.
one of the greatest
And it's
ways.
like a muscle. It's a muscle that you have to work out. And I think that I talk to a lot of women who are in transition. Maybe it's midlife, maybe it's becoming empty nesters, or they're transitioning into caregiving for elderly parents. Maybe they're going through a divorce, and I think that oftentimes we don't, especially as women, speaking generally, we're so used to taking care of others, and we spend a lot of our lives taking care of others that we might not even know what like our sources or what we believe in or what is available to us, and how important it is.
Yeah, we're looking our energies outwardly all the time. So it's, like you were saying, particularly young girls and maybe some young boys observe their mothers from a very young age, putting everyone before themselves. I remember my mum giving everybody the dinner and then actually sitting in the corner of the kitchen or standing and quickly eating her own. So it gave me that perception from a very young age that, we're not important. Our needs have to come secondary.
Exactly.
And I think that's such a that you said there. So we're then constantly mixing with a little bit of trauma, which we all have, a little bit of rejection or
Hmm.
blame or criticism. All of a sudden, we start looking externally for that validation that we never had growing up or, through any experience. So that's when we're looking out. And that for me is the beauty of the healing through the connection to source, because the answers, I think people probably heard it a million times, are within. And when literally to connect, just stop looking outside, just notice this validation, um, and seek that validation within, even if it's just writing a letter from your
Right, and you
soul.
spoke about writing, and I think that that's a great entry level way for people to start to figure out what they want, start to figure out, where they need support. And can you maybe share a little bit about thoughts you have on ways people can start with writing? I know people talk about journaling, or like artists talk about the book The Artist's Way and the morning pages, and there's different methods. But like for someone who's really has no idea where to start, is there somewhere you can point them?
As far as writing
Yeah.
concerned, I think pen and paper, and writing with no agenda,
Mm.
which really, really, really sounds like something that would be hard to do. Um, Another one, which is an inner child practice that I do with people when they're writing, when they're beginning on their journey of healing journey, for example, or connection journey, is to ask them which is their predominant hand. So if it's the right hand, we would say, okay, the right hand is the adult self, and the left hand is the child self. Because obviously, when you write with a hand that's not used to it, it would look like the child's writing. So I would say to them, okay, write these words with the predominant hand, and it would be, what do you need? and then to put the pen to the non-predominant hand, which is the child self, and then ask the child to answer the question.
That's
And
fabulous.
it's absolutely remarkable because every time people would say things, all sorts of things, but love, um, respect, being heard, being listened to, feeling safe. And then we would go on, and I know this is like in a therapeutic way, but it's a great way to start a conversation with yourself. So if you were to write down with your non-predominant hand, love and being heard, then you could then go back to the predominant adult
Hmm.
self and write down the ways that you could love yourself, the ways that you could have yourself be heard. For me, is a really simple way to begin that journey of self exploration because even though you might not think that the answers will come, they always
Yeah.
come.
And it's so accessible and it's very kind and loving to yourself as opposed to having pressure.
And critical because quite
Mm.
often the thing, if you're not used to writing as a form of creative expression, to have pen and paper and someone to say in a classroom or a training environment, okay, so I want you to write down, something about yourself, or straight away people would be like, oh
Hmm.
my God, I don't even know, that's too much pressure
Right.
for me. Whereas if there's some directive, like have a little conversation with your little
Mm.
self, because it's really strange. But when I did this practice years and years ago, one of the things that came up for me, because we did it in a slightly different way. We did it in the sense of, what do you like to do for fun?
Mm.
Because that's part of creativity. And the things that I put with the child hand was dancing, roller skating, horse riding, reading. And what was really interesting was I then went on and picked up nearly all of those things up again that I've not been doing as a child. Because when you think about it, when you're expressing yourself, and I wrote a lot when I was a child, I used to write stories and
Hmm.
poems, but then the adults now got in the way, the job, the responsibilities, the house, all the other
Yeah.
things. And I think that creativity can lose its way.
Absolutely. And I think
Um,
that's often one of the guiding things that I talk to people about is what did you love as a child before society came in, before you had some kind of criticism against your creative expression or maybe was there a theme, was there a time period, was there some kind of fantasy that you loved. Those are the places to look, right? To see what you should be tapping into now.
do you know what? I found as well, Pam, that one of the ways that quite often creativity is kind of oppressed and is not fluid anymore. And that quite often, as we go to the mental place for that answer, but quite often that pushing all that stuff, that creativity down inside, actually creates rigidity within the body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I found it quite interesting because I used to love to dance and compete and did all sorts of things when I was a child. But then got to a point where if I'd not had a drink when I was in my late 20s, I would say, I wouldn't dance. And I found one time we went to a party, and my friend was already on the dance floor, and she was like, "Come and dance." And I heard myself say, "I need to have a drink
Mm-hmm.
first." And I went away and actually processed that because I'm quite analytical and research for myself and for others I want to discover. And I thought to myself, the reason why is because I'm no longer comfortable with expressing myself that
Mm-hmm.
way freely without judgment. And from that came the idea that once again I'm looking outside myself for the
Absolutely. And
foundation
I
and
I
not.
think a lot of it now you can just dance with nothing. I think a lot of it too is just like fear of judgment and we have a lot of old tapes playing in our head. I think all of us, and I think it doesn't even necessarily mean that somebody had to have a traumatic, childhood like you did, or have, whatever things I had. I,
A failure if you're a sensitive person can be
yeah,
enough.
it really, and I think even if people are well-meaning, to a youth or a teen or someone who's in their formative years, it still can affect you. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have had that extreme to still have these feelings, right? Like you could still have this inside you.
Absolutely. discovered that I'm classed as what they call, and I don't like boxes, but a highly sensitive
Yes, I want to
person.
hear about that.
Absolutely. And so failures for me, I didn't realize why I struggled sometimes because I'm very tenacious when I'm doing something. But when a failure came along, instead of thinking it as a redirection or something where I could learn some more, it would hit me very hard, and I wouldn't have that ability to just get up and see it as a redirection or as, be able to brush it off
Right.
and show my resilience there. And that again can be, perceived as someone has judged me, why have I failed? And are you still creating all those stories about yourself?
Yeah.
And it's just amazing if there's probably lots of people that will listen to this and not understand that they are highly
Yeah,
sensitive
that was one of
people.
the things that stood out to me in your live that you did, and it's something I've never heard of personally, but then once I heard you both talking about it, I was like, I think, that's definitely me my whole life, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about that so that people can understand that there are other reasons that they could feel the way they feel.
Absolutely. And I think, a highly sensitive person is someone that can have lots of different elements, but there predominantly would be a high sensitivity to not only the way other people behave, but also sensory. So it would be bright lights, it would be a lot of noise, a lot of crowds, it would be even
Mhm.
smells. Um, and they have a tendency to overthink or overanalyze. So there would be an element of tiredness. We would get tired more easily. Um, and that can be difficult because a lot of people that don't have it would see you as having been lazy or, there's something wrong with you. And it also ties into another category, which is neurodivergence. Where your brain is wired a different way. So we think differently, we process differently. And for anyone out there that has actually had this diagnosis or feels like they would want to explore that, I would say do that because being neurodivergent or highly sensitive along your life path can present lots of challenges, again, from judgment from other people. And I just want to say for anyone that is highly sensitive or neurodivergent, it can be your greatest gift. It is a gift and it is a blessing. But you have to be able to understand it,
Mhm.
to be able to stand by it. And yes, it does make it a little bit more challenging to connect with a lot of people. But then there are some amazing people that you can connect with and have some beautiful connection with and experience with. So highly sensitive people, my experience has been an inability to show my emotions because I was always told that I was too sensitive or too emotional, that I would overreact. So all those things over a period of time would again tie into your perception of your identity.
Mhm.
Making people making you feel
Yeah.
wrong, and not on purpose because those people 9 times out of 10 didn't understand either. I now work with highly sensitive children with their parents, which I love to do because my parents, through no fault of their own, didn't
Right.
understand the sensitivity. And so I want to be able to prepare
What a
other
gift.
parents.
What a gift for those children, for their life, and also for the parents being able to have a relationship with their children that is, more kind and loving and understanding and really understanding them as people.
Huge, huge. And to be able to be supported as a child means you can, creativity, your gifts can come out without adopting that identity of there's something wrong with me. And, that I grew up with that. And I think I'm quite a strong personality. So I was able to override. But it's taken a lot of searching and a lot of analysing and a lot of reflection. And as you say, a lot of self-soothing along the way as well. So, if anybody out there is highly sensitive or neurodivergent, I would say celebrate yourself because you are so gifted and so unique. And for me, so chosen, we have a real purpose and path to walk when it comes to helping not just ourselves, but our collective as well, which is so important right
Absolutely.
now.
And I feel like people that feel they're different, like I grew up feeling I was different from my family, from the people around me, and I had creative outlets. I had art from a young age, from as long as I can remember. I had some kind of some kind of personal self-expression. And I think that was my savior. And I think that that was my place to retreat. I was just writing something last night about that, about how important creativity is and how it's not something that's just on the side. It's not like when you can fit it in, around other things. And for me, I really look at it as something that was, a haven for me all through my life. And now it's, now that I know more about myself, and I've had many years in recovery, and I've had a lot of experience, life experience, it it shifted, but it's still like my companion. It's still the place that I can retreat to. It's still where I find out about myself. And I think for people, learning about the fact that they just might learn different. I know it's much more open these days to talk about the different ways like children learn, right? It wasn't like that when I was a child. And for example, our son, who's now going to be 26 in September, he went through a Montessori program, and I don't know if you know about Montessori, but it was a child led program that he went through from preschool through eighth grade. And so he had this beautiful gift of knowing that everybody learns differently, everybody's minds work differently, everybody learns at different speeds, right? So they have multi-age groupings in their classrooms so that some children learn things quicker, children need more time. And so I feel like there are these gifts that young people have today, or like our children have today, that we didn't maybe have access to. And I feel like for me, creativity that was my lifeline. And I don't even know where I would be if I didn't have a strong creative outlet. I definitely could have gotten in a lot more trouble. I don't know.
Absolutely. I think, what's interesting is it's interesting ways how we can discover it. Sometimes it can be so oppressed and never have come out in childhood, for example. So we've got no idea. Um, for me, funnily enough, I've got a crazy story about how I found my creativity. And that was, I was born with dislocated hips. And so they didn't find them well a little bit later on. And so I was put in plaster cast for a long, long time. And it would have been around the time I would be crawling and walking. So obviously there was a lot of frustration. So my mum taught me to read and write really young and gave me books so I could explore through books because I couldn't explore the world physically. And so maybe that was divine intervention. I have no idea what you want to call it, but it highlighted my love of the written word and of. So I travelled through books when I couldn't travel physically. Um, and that was just such a wonderful thing for me because without books, without writing, and without being able to express myself that way, I would have been encased in a kind of hell.
Right. Trapped, right?
You
Yeah.
know? Absolutely. And not being able to have an expression about how I felt or, you know, and that's such a wonderful thing. So I don't think it was just an intuitive thing for my mum. Well, how can I get her to experience different things while she's still sat in that chair all
Hmm.
day? And so that to me is just such a wonderful thing. So I'm not saying everyone else has that
Right.
story. Uh, and I know that some people are more creative than others, but I think if you've not felt that you've been able to fully express yourself in your life and you felt very misunderstood. Um, I would say to people, if you don't know what it is that you is your form of expression, try different
Hmm.
things.
Right.
Maybe cake making, flower arranging. It can be a whole heap of things: writing, dancing, singing. It doesn't mean to say that you have to make it necessarily your profession.
Hmm. And you don't have to show anybody.
It Oh, exactly, exactly. The booking things. I'm the queen of notebooks. I've got notebooks everywhere. I love a notebook, so I've got lots. Some that are never finished, um, but it's for me. And sometimes I write articles from the notes, but a lot of the time it's just for me. It's me having to express something or sometimes get rid of something.
Hmm.
Um, And I think because I am highly sensitive, it's very predominant for me because a lot of the time when you are highly sensitive, you are judged for that, for being over expressive. But on paper, in a closed book, I can be fully myself. And I think the more you sit with that for me on paper, the more confident and the more in love with it you are, and then able to express it outside if you choose to. And I certainly do, and I enjoy now going really, really deep. I still have people that say to me, "You're so deep," and it's like I'm okay with that because for some reason,
How do you use them? Do you have like a set time that you sit down and write? Do you have some kind of ritual around it, or is it just like you think something, you pick it up, and you do it?
I think a lot of the time I feel the need to write. A lot of the time. Obviously, I write as part of my work as well. So I would have a schedule in the sense of a very loose schedule. Okay, I'll write 2 articles a week on Substack, for example, and maybe 4 to 5 minutes a day. And I would discipline myself to that. Whether that always occurs is a different story because I think when you're a writer, for example, and you write something really good, there can be a pressure to always produce that type of material every time, and it doesn't always come. However, again, I do take a little bit of time to connect the source, and I can quite often be driving the car and I think, "Oh, I need to stop and write this down or do a recording, or oh, that was so good." Do I do something with all of it? No, but I think a lot of the time I just enjoy the indulgence of those thoughts and of that expression. And it's, I'm not sure whether it's very much an predominantly introverted person's thing. I think writing maybe that's not an
Mm-hmm.
expression. But it certainly gives me a lot of pleasure. And in, now, in the past, I would have given myself a hard time for maybe not delivering. I've written books for people and things. Um, but I think now it's more about my own indulgence in it. It's my romance with writing, I think.
Yep. And you talked about being introvert and or like writing being associated with being more introverted. And I know that you shared about getting out of your comfort zone. And
Yeah.
I would love if you could just talk a little bit about what that's like for you, or like why you do that, or how you choose to do that, what it does for you.
Why would you do that?
I'm doing it right now.
Exactly, me too, and me too. I think because it's very easy to strengthen our strengths and not strengthen our weaknesses or to avoid them. I think as a solopreneur, I am aware that there's certain things that we need to do that are uncomfortable, particularly with social media and videos and that kind of thing. But what's interesting is, again, when you have an inner belief that you are worthy of doing anything, that you are good enough to do anything, that can help you to get over those milestones of doing things that are uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And a lot of the time, it's interesting because what you can fear, you end up enjoying a lot.
Exactly. I agree.
It's quite surprising. But I think, yeah, I think we all have that tendency to strengthen our strengths and then, not focus on our weaknesses. So for me, I do it because it's necessary for my
Hmm.
business. And I do it because I want to be growing on all levels. And I like the feeling of increasing my self-esteem by doing things that are challenging,
Hmm.
because I think that self-esteem can be something that, again, we may look outside for validation, hoping. But that's very fragile, isn't
Hmm.
it? If we're just looking for other people for it, because on the days when they're not able to give it or they don't want to,
Hmm.
then
Or
that
they
means
have
our self.
something going on themselves that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, it helps to build self-esteem to write down the things that you're frightened to do the most, overcome them, even when you're quivering or sweating or whatever, and then feel the pride in
Mm-hmm.
yourself, even if it doesn't go anywhere, just knowing that you've done that. I remember when I trained to be a life coach, I trained with Tony Robbins originally, and I realised after the coaching training that I would have to do public speaking, and that was as an introvert, my worst nightmare, my worst nightmare. But my purpose to reach as many people as possible pushed me to
Mm-hmm.
get over that. So I went to a Toastmasters session, one Saturday morning. And when I got there, I was actually physically sick outside the car because I was that terrified. Um, but I still went in, probably not looking my, and it was literally to listen. And I was so petrified of actually being in the room where people were doing what I was frightened of. And what was really funny at the end, there were three new people, myself included. And the man that was organising the Toastmaster said, would any of the three new people like to come up and try for 3 minutes to speak about anything? And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that because I knew that I had to follow through with my plan, with my purpose. And I talked utter rubbish for 3 minutes and it was highly uncomfortable. But I walked into that room feeling sick and I walked out of that room feeling 10 feet high.
That's amazing.
Uh,
It's such
yeah.
a great
And it's
reminder too that like you just don't know like what's going to come out of something like that, something uncomfortable.
no, and that's it. And it's funny because as we've been talking, I've kept saying as an introvert, and I'm aware that that also, while as an identity, um, can also be something that can inhibit us. So that's kind of a bit of a reflection of myself there. So I'm going to use that a little bit less because if introversion means, more of an internal world as a life coach that wants to work with people and help people overcome these challenges and be the best version of themselves, and I have to adopt as well. Maybe a little bit more of an extrovert identity. Maybe I'll start calling myself
There
an
you go.
extrovert. Who knows?
And you can do that, right? You can do whatever you want. You can call yourself anything.
And it's amazing when you do and adopt those habits that you actually become
Yeah,
that.
right?
So far,
Right, it's
really
like free will, you know? And I
is.
know you talk a little bit about, or maybe not a little bit about the laws of the universe, and I would love to just touch on that a little bit and how you sort of use the these basic laws and or thoughts or feelings and how you tap into that, what that means to you, the laws of the universe.
I think for me, it is absolutely huge. It's about empathy. It's about knowing that, simply put, you have to, first of all, identify what you want. Actually, sometimes can be a challenging thing because those old stories get in the way of that. And I'd like this, but I can't, or I won't, or it's not for me, or I'm not the type of person. So the first thing is to be clear about what you want and then expand on that tenfold. So to dream big, like we used to do when we were
Mm-hmm.
children before all the stuff got piled on top. And then to move into that place, maybe to say to yourself, I don't know, I want to be a life coach. So what would I be doing if I was living as a life coach now? So we have to adopt the identity because when source energy sees that we're adopting that identity, it cannot help but to match that energy and that identity. So I would write down, create an avatar. What would a life coach do? How would they walk? How would they talk? How would they speak about themselves, which is super important? How do they speak about what they can achieve? And a lot of people are quite uncomfortable with speaking about, our
Mm-hmm.
abilities and our talents and our gifts. So I would also do that, and I would also take steps every day towards that. So maybe I would do some training around that. And there's lots of free training available, so it doesn't have to be a paid training. It can be just actually adopting the identity. It's like when someone wants more money, then they would, for me, adopt the identity of someone who already has that money. And so they would, instead of saying to themselves, I can't afford that, saying to themselves, well, I might not be able to afford the highest level, but I can afford and give yourself the best of your ability. Because if we're always going to charity shops and going to free things, then the universe energetically is reflecting that back to us as like we are a low level person. And I know that, there may be people that would listen to this and think, well, maybe that's okay, but there's times in my life when I've had a lot and I've not had so much. But what I know that to have develop incredible belief in yourself, that you have the same abilities as anyone else, that you may have to try a little bit harder, you may have to try less for some things. Um, but self-belief is absolutely paramount. One of the things that I use every day is thinking about the identity of what I want to move into, as if it's now, and acting like that person. And also not condemning yourself and not condemning other people. If we think in terms of energy, then words have energy, thoughts have energy, and so do
Yeah,
actions. So even if you're not where you want to be right now, you can still adopt the words and the thoughts and the actions of someone who is in the place where you want to be.
absolutely.
That's very simply put, very simply
Yeah,
put.
no, it's perfect.
Um,
It's a great entry level.
yeah, absolutely. And I think if you can just at least define that, you can scale
Mhm.
up. You can scale up. You can keep scaling
Right,
up.
and it might change. What you
Um,
think you want might change or probably will change. So you might not know in the beginning.
yeah, but it's like, okay, well, if you are a student teacher, then okay, well, how would a high school teacher, or we can scale up gently
Hmm.
all the time by thoughts, words, and behaviors. If you are someone that condemns, then you will be condemned. If you're someone that judges, you will be judged. We attract not not what we want, we attract who we are.
Mm,
So if you want good people around you, kind people, be kind.
yeah,
It's the universe, energy source, energy, whatever you want to call it, is reflecting us all the time. I'll tell you one of the interesting things that I do that's a super, super easy thing to do is if you've got something, a meeting or a coaching session or an interview, something that's, super important to you that you want to do well in, I spend a little bit of time beforehand closing my eyes and visualizing the outcome that I want. And that's a simple thing that anyone can use. Anyone can use their energy because often when it's a new thing, we can fear it.
mhm,
So we put fear into it. But to laugh and celebrate and pretend you're engaging in a positive way, feel the feelings of it. And then when you go into the interview or the event, you're halfway there.
absolutely. I do the same thing. Obviously, I do it with the podcast, but even when I was decorative painting and I would be, I'd have to go do a mural or something the night before, I might have fear around it or, lack of confidence, even though it was something I have been doing. And I would picture the whole process to the end, the
Yeah.
night before. And then in the morning, it was just showing up and enjoying it and like journeying through it. I had already like worked out that stuff in my head.
And that's super powerful when adopting that identity. If you're speaking as and acting as and thinking as, then we can also visualize ourselves as, and we do it as
Hmm.
children. What happens when we move into adults? We're scared to dream.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's like, okay, well, that's okay, but, this is more
right.
practical. But if your heart and soul's in it and it's what you're here for, then I would suggest just step into that identity as if it already exists, and alongside of obviously other things, it will manifest. It can't not.
Yeah. What are some of the tools or services that you offer? I will put all your contact information in the show notes so people can find you. But like what are some things that you could offer for people just sort of starting out on this creative journey?
Okay. I think one of the predominant things that I work with people is I offer programs, but also my love is one-to-one coaching. I think I want to work with people quite intensely, short periods of time. I want to get them got the job done. I want to spark them into creativity. So what I would do is explore with them the roadblocks, the mindset, the stories, and then recreate all that, actually get them to move into a place where they're dreaming as big as possible and that they have full self-belief in themselves. And then through spirituality, source energy, show them how to connect, how to believe, and how to move into that as easy as possible. So that for me is the predominant ways that I work with people. I want people to shift identities, to believe that anything is possible. I think to empower them, but also to use teach them how to use that powerful spiritual energy that maybe they've not been attached to in the past when they've been
Or didn't know was available.
absolutely they've been conforming or meeting other people's needs because it's so exciting. I recently joined a course which was out of my comfort zone financially, and I've done it a few times. So this is the third time, and each time it's because I've shrunk back a little bit, and I ought to remember that every time I invest, and I'm not really sure where the money's going to come from, but I need to do it. It feels right. Then so I invested in the course, and 2 days later, a client called me and offered the exact same amount.
Of course. Of course.
And I was like, well, there we go. Why did I not remember that? But obviously, people listening would think, wow, well, that's, I've spent thousands. But it works, but it's about the belief. And one of the things about the law of attraction more than anything is you must believe it before you see it. And that is the crux of humanity. We always want to see it before we'll believe that it exists.
Exactly.
So I would say that is a predominant thing that I do with people when I work with people, when I coach them, is move them into a place of believing that everything they desire exists and get them into a place of actually pursuing confidently.
That's wonderful. Is there anything else that you would love to add that we didn't touch on?
We've covered quite a lot. It's been quite. I'm all fired up now. I think if I could just share this, that wherever you are now in your life, it does not mean that you have to stay there. That you are, regardless of what's happened, that you are able to at any time to change your identity, to become the person of your dreams and live the life of your dreams, regardless of what's going on now. Everything is temporary, and you are always loved, always supported, and always enough. Always.
Ah, what a great way to finish it. Thank you so much for being here. This was awesome.
Thank you. It's been brilliant. I've loved it. Absolutely loved it.
So great. And I'm glad that we were able to touch on everything that I wanted to. And I look forward to staying in touch with you. And like I said, I'll put all your contact information in the show notes so people can find you and follow along on Substack and wherever else. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Lots of love.
Before I let you go, I just want to take a moment to reflect on what Nicola shared with us. There were so many things in that conversation that resonated with me, but one of the biggest was her reminder that you must believe it before you see it. That kind of inner trust, that deep belief in yourself and what's possible, is so often the missing piece when we're trying to grow and change. Also, I loved how she described creativity as a way back to the self. It's not always about making something beautiful or impressive. It's about giving yourself a place to feel, to process, and to reconnect. And that space can feel sacred. Something else that really stuck with me is the idea that we don't need to wait for outside permission. We don't have to stay small to keep others comfortable. You get to choose your own timeline, your own path, and your own way of expressing yourself. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from today. You get to decide how much space and grace you offer yourself, how much softness you allow into your own process. You don't have to get it all perfect. You just have to start. So as you move through your day, maybe ask yourself, where have I been waiting for permission? And what would it look like to give it to myself? Thank you for spending time here with me and Nicola. I hope it sparked something in you, and as always, I'll be back next week with another story, another voice, and another step towards building a creative life that's all your own. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe for free and share it with a friend. It helps others find the show and grows our community. Remember, creativity is yours to define, there are no rules, and it's never too late. Until next time.